This is called Hearst Circle, where they are bringing the hearse in now. Hearst Circle, but they're bringing the hearse up there, up to the front steps of Washington National Cathedral. And Nancy Cordes is there, and I know she's smiling because we know Hearst Circle well. That's our neighborhood. And Nancy, describe what you're seeing.
Norah, the hearse has just pulled up directly behind us at the steps of the Washington National Cathedral. The military honor guard is already in place to receive the hearse and carry it into the cathedral. But first, members of President Carter's immediate family who have been traveling in the funeral procession will depart their cars. They will walk in. And this is a man who had 11 grandchildren, 14 great-grandchildren, and many of them will be serving as honorary pallbearers today, walking alongside the casket of their grandfather and great-grandfather as it is carried into the church. One of the nice things about living to be 100 years old is that you have some time to think about how you'd like to be remembered, how you'd like to be honored. And Carter played a role in a lot of what we will see today. For example, Trisha Yearwood and Garth Brooks, two names we know well, will be singing here in the National Cathedral today. They worked with him on several Habitat for Humanity projects, and they'll be singing one of his favorite songs, Imagine, by John Lennon, which he loved because it was a song about world peace. He said that it had practically become a second national anthem in some countries that didn't always experience a lot of peace.
It's a great point, Nancy Cordes. Thank you. Robert Costa is here with us.
As we watch this beautiful scene unfold at the National Cathedral, it's important to also remember that today will end in Plains, Georgia. You had such a powerful conversation, Norah, with Tony Loudon, the pastor, personal pastor for President Carter. I went to visit the pastor at Maranatha Baptist Church, a simple place. It feels like it's right out of the Carter presidency with its shaggy green carpet, low-key, low-slung building. But it was so powerful on Tuesday night when I went to the Capitol to see thousands late at night coming to pay their respects to President Carter. And thousands over the years went to Maranatha Baptist to pay their respects at that small church to see him teach Sunday school. So you see the grandeur of the presidency in this moment, but it ends with something so symbolic of President Carter's life, a simplicity of faith and service that will really be the finality of this important and moving day.
This is Jimmy Carter's extended family now entering the cathedral. Douglas?
Well, and a couple of enterprising musical producers have taken Jimmy Carter's sermons from Maranatha Baptist and Plains and put them on a CD, and it got nominated for a Grammy. So President Carter's up for a Grammy for spoken word against Cher and Barbra Streisand. So it's you know, big competition. And the family has been just every step of the way here, staying together as a group and doing everything you would expect of the children and the grandchildren to do. And I think Amy Carter's crying this past week was one of the emotional moments that kind of choked people up.
Barry, I want to note that when President Carter left office in January 1981, the Carters spoke with Leslie Stahl about what it was like to return home to Plains, Georgia, after losing the election. Let's listen.
Here's what you said, though, when President Clinton gave you the Medal of Freedom. We left Washington in something of despair, embarrassment, and frustration.
Mm-hmm. That's true. We did. And we came back to Plains with no idea at all of what we would do with the rest of our lives. And I realized that I had a life expectancy of 25 years or so as a 56-year-old ex-president. And we found to our amazement and despair that we were $1 million in debt. Mm-hmm. We had left a very thriving business when we went to the White House, and it went downhill during those 4 years.
In a blind trust.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We thought we were going to lose our farms and our home, and we didn't know what we were going to have to do to repay our debt. So, so we kind of huddled down and came back to Plains where we felt we belonged.
But it does suggest that there was despair. even though you don't write about it.
Well, there was despair.
Despair,
No doubt about
discouragement,
that.
uncertainty about the future. But it didn't take us long to start planning what we were going to do.
And many people don't know that part of from Leslie's interview too, about what a difficult return to Plains it was, Bob.
Well, he had put all of his holdings in a blind trust. And only when he left the White House did he discover he was not just flat broke, he owed $1 million. And people say, why did he write so many books? He started writing the books because he had to make a living. And he wound up writing 35, and we're all the better for knowing that. But that was the beginning of his literary career.
And Leslie Stahl is with us, and Leslie was revealing how difficult that post-presidency period was in the beginning that he turned around.
He turned it around, and the most important part was not the financial part. It was what he decided to do with his life, which we all know about. People talk so much about the post-presidency, where he was, I want to say, curing diseases in Africa, building homes for poor people. His post-presidency was just a remarkable example for presidents and for all of us. What a way to spend your last years. He only thought he had 25 years left. That's part of that interview that I found amusing, looking back on it. He said, I only have 25 years to go. He obviously decided not just to revive his family financially, but to make it meaningful, to give it a real purpose, a serious purpose. I just was reminded of something. He taught Sunday school the whole time he was president. He would go back to Georgia, and one day, and go back to Plains, one day I was in the pool in Sunday school, and he gave his sermon, and he looked up right at me. I'll never forget this, obviously. He looked right up at me and he pointed and he said, I hope you got something out of this. I thought, oh my God. Presidents, none of them like the press. I just want to impress upon everybody, none of them.
Well, you certainly remember that, and we can all remember those admonitions from presidents that we cover. Yeah. I just want to take a moment to just listen in to what's happening at the magnificent Washington National Cathedral here in Washington. As Nancy Cordes reminded us, is the second largest in the Americas and the sixth largest in the world. Robert Costa is with us, and we're just waiting for direction about when the next part of this procession begins, where they will bring the casket inside the Washington National Cathedral for the services that begin in just about 10 to 15 minutes from now.
And it's a moment for the American presidency. President Joe Biden, in his final days in his term, will deliver a eulogy today, something sources close to him have told me he's thought a lot about. He was the first U.S. senator to endorse Jimmy Carter, then Governor Carter, when Carter was running for president in 1976. And when you think about President Biden's career and President Carter, they were both forged in that early period of the 1970s. Carter goes to the convention in 1972 in Miami and says, maybe presidential politics is something I could do. Joe Biden, of course, elected to the Senate in 1972, endured tragedy that year as well. And they've coursed through American life, not always on the same path, but aligned, relatively speaking, for a long time. And President-elect Trump will be here today. And it's notable that President-elect Trump last night went to the U.S. Capitol and paid his respects to President Carter alongside First Lady, former First Lady, and incoming First Lady Melania Trump. And Trump said to reporters that he's always had a strong relationship with Carter, not a close relationship per se, but a respectful one. And a former Carter advisor, Jerry Rafshoon, told me about a 2019 phone call they had, Trump and Carter, where they joked about how they both did not particularly like John Bolton, Trump's national security advisor. And it speaks to Trump's playfulness with some of the former presidents. Trump and Carter both have their own irregularities, shall we say, when it comes to that so-called President's Club in American political life. But they themselves always had a relatively friendly relationship. President Trump will be there today.
It is called the world's most exclusive fraternity, and 5 of those so-called presidents and former presidents will be there. Nancy Cordes is outside the cathedral. Nancy?
Norah, I was just thinking as Robert was talking about Donald Trump and his relationship with Jimmy Carter, that's notable. You know, Trump is not always a welcome presence at some of these events. I'm thinking in particular of the late Senator John McCain's funeral that was also held here at the Washington National Cathedral, where it was made known that McCain did not want Trump to be here. They had a famously fractious relationship. But the Carters, on the other hand, made it very clear when Rosalind Carter passed away a little over a year ago that they very much hoped that Melania Trump would be among the other first ladies, current and former, who attended her service. So a family that always looked for inclusivity. I think it's also notable, as we've heard Douglas and Leslie talking so eloquently about Carter's lifelong relationship with his Vice President Walter Mondale. That's something that shouldn't be taken for granted either. There are several presidents in that cathedral right now who famously did not and do not have great relationships with their former vice presidents. President Clinton and Vice President Gore, we're told, are not particularly close. We believe that President-elect Trump and his former vice president, Mike Pence, actually haven't even been in the same room since they left office in 2021. And so they're coming face to face for the first time in 4 years. They're in the cathedral today. Randy Hollerith, who, as you know, Norah, is the dean of the Washington National Cathedral, spoke to reporters yesterday. He said that he had the opportunity to meet late President Carter when he was a teenager. He said that Carter was famously punctual, which is something that can't be said about all presidents. And so they are going to try to honor his punctuality today by keeping the service to time, which they say is something that Carter would have wanted. So we anticipate that if everything goes as planned, the service will last about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half.
Thank you. Yes, the dean of the cathedral, Randy Hollerith, Reverend Holler, is saying you're really watching history unfold when you come to these funerals. And it's not only an opportunity for people to remember a president, but also to watch the people who are honoring him that have gathered here for that very moment. And Douglas, you knew the former president so well, and people like to hear these anecdotal stories. I can remember when I interviewed him, he was 96 years old, and we knew he was punctual. We were ready to go, and at the last moment, there was a little bit of a mechanical problem. He did become a bit impatient, even though we were talking about the topic of faith. Even in his late years, that discipline, that punctuality never ceased to leave him.
Because you knew that about the punctuality, but by human nature, you might be a minute late. And he's very down home in one way, but also in an intimidating seniority. Yeah, if you walked in and you were a moment late, then you would get the glare, and you knew you were.
Was this the nuclear submariner in him?
It was the military in him, and that, you know, since he joined the Naval Academy in 1943, and then continued with the naval career, that was there's no room for a second wrong when you're on a nuclear submarine on a Pacific fleet, you know, in typhoon weather.